Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. I should warn you that this video contains pacers, so if you're one of those people who hates pacers, you might want to look away. This video comes courtesy of my mate Jack, and you've probably seen Jack on this channel before. But anyway, he's a bit of an N-Gauge freak, and when he heard that I was starting to do some N-Gauge reviews, he very kindly offered to loan me some of his N-Gauge models, and today I'm looking at one of those. So I am indeed looking at a pacer, and it is this, the Dapol N-Gauge Class 142 pacer. So thank you very much, Jack, for lending me this, and I am going to be very careful with it. But anyway, the Class 142, or the pacer, why do people hate pacers? Well, first of all, I should say, why do some people hate pacers? Because I've come on here before and said everybody hates pacers, and there's always one who pops up in the comments and goes, I like pacers. So to those people, that is absolutely fine. I'm sorry for saying everybody hates pacers. I'm also sorry for that voice. I know you probably don't sound like that. But why do most people hate pacers? Well, mainly it's because these pacers were essentially just Leyland buses on rails. And as such, they're noisy, they're cramped, they're uncomfortable, they're slow, they're too hot or too cold, the temperature's never right, they've got no toilets, and they've got no proper facilities for disabled people. Now, I can't remember whether or not I've ever been on a pacer. I guess I would remember if I'd been through an ordeal like that. However, for many years, my school bus was a Leyland bus, and let's just say that wasn't exactly a pleasant experience. So I can totally see why people wouldn't like pacers in real life, but obviously this is a Dapol model of a pacer, so hopefully we can enjoy this a little bit more. So according to the retailers, the full price for these Dapol pacers is £156.40, and your typical retailer price for these is about £132 to £133. Although sometimes they come on special, and at the time of filming you can find these for more like £100, which is not bad, I think, for a two-car set. But anyway, what is this model like? What is my first DMU in N-scale like? That's going to be exciting. Well, let's find out. So, as you can see, this is a two-car set, and I'm not a pacer expert by any means, but I'm not aware of the pacers ever running in any other configuration. So never as single vehicles as far as I know, and never more than two. I've certainly never seen a model pacer with a different number of vehicles. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box so you can see which version we've got here. So this is 2D-142-002. It's number 142042. It is the N-Gauge Class 142 in the Merseyrail livery. And Jack's one of those Scousers, so that explains why he's gone for this livery. But there's not really much else to see on the box, so I think we'll crack into this, or rather open it carefully because it's not mine, and then we'll have a little look and see what we get. So I have noticed that there are instructions on the bottom here, so we'll start by taking a look at these. They seem quite comprehensive really, given how small the model is. Okay, so Class 142, important instructions. Got to read this before using the model. Okay, so the model needs light oiling before use. That is fine, we will do that. And they have showed you where the oiling points are. DCC operation, apparently this is DCC ready with an X18 plug, so that's pretty nice and modern. Although it does say that for DCC use you actually need two decoders for this, because the lighting on the front and rear cars is independent. So, ooh, yeah, that's going to be a little bit pricey, isn't it? And then in terms of the internal lighting, it says that the models are light bar ready, and that you can fit interior light bars if you want to, although obviously that makes it sound like you don't have them from the factory. So that's a pity, you know, you need two decoders and you have to presumably buy one of these light bars if you want it to be fully functional on DCC. Yeah, it's kind of expensive given that, isn't it? And then on the back we've got a very kind of blocky looking exploded diagram. What is going on there? But it does show you how this thing works mechanically. So you've got a centrally mounted motor. I assume it's going to be a coreless, but that doesn't look like a coreless, so we'll take a look later on. So I assume that both vehicles probably have a motor in them as well, although I'll double check that later on. Okay, couplings, it comes with the standard, that word, couplings fitted, and you can change them for Buckeyes if you want. Okay, it's an M pocket, nice. Accessories, we'll look at those. That's pretty much it for that one. And then what is this? That's the warranty, so we can overlook that for now. Okay, let's take a look and see what we get in the actual pack then. So does this lift off? Yeah. And let's start with a look at the accessories. You can see them for ourselves in a nice resealable bag. And inside here we've got quite a few different couplings. I assume we've got the Buckeyes, yeah, as mentioned in the instructions. And some of these must also be the magnetic couplings that were mentioned. I'm not familiar with those, but they're in the bag and you can fit them if you want. And I guess I should pull this tray out. Alright, so they come in quite a stiff foam tray, and as you can see they're in there pretty good. Yeah, nothing else in the box. So let's gently start to push these out. So I'm going to push them out from underneath and pray that, ooh, blimey, it's stiff, I tell you that. And pray that nothing breaks off them. Ooh, tell you what, that's quite a heavy little unit there. Alright, so yeah, this unit is driven and we can see the gears underneath. I can also see that it picks up through the axles, so you haven't got drag from pickups, which is probably a smart thing at this scale. And there is the Pacer itself, and it is pretty tiny, obviously, I mean it's N scale, but there seems to be a fair bit of detail on here. Perhaps not that much in terms of separately fitted detail, but the moulding and the decoration looks wonderful, really, really impressive. So we'll take a closer look at that in a second. Let's find out then whether the other vehicle is driven. Actually, this feels a lot lighter now that that first one's gone. So maybe not then. Yeah, this is definitely lighter. So if we look underneath, you can see this has actually got the same chassis. So it's got space for the gears, and I bet there's motor mounts inside it as well. And there's even driving gears on the driving axles, but we've got nothing like that fitted. So I guess they just use the same chassis because it's cheaper that way. They don't have to develop another. And also it's got the pickups built in and presumably all the infrastructure for the lighting as well. But yeah, we only have one driven vehicle, and then we've got the conductive coupling here, which presumably connects the two together so that they can share pickups, and that should make them more reliable. But there you have it, there's the other car, looking pretty much the same obviously, great livery, fantastic decoration. And if I hold them together, I won't slot them together just yet, I'll wait till I'm on the track for that. But there you have it, that's roughly what it's going to look like, the Dapol N-Gage Pacer in the Merseyrail livery. And it looks wonderful, it really, really does. And we'll take a much closer look at this in just a second. But first of all, a bit of background on the Pacers in real life. The British Rail Class 142 was introduced in 1985, and the design closely reflected that of the Leyland National Bus, as I've been saying, and they were in fact known as rail buses. The Pacer came about because British Rail had to do something about their ageing first-generation DMUs. These were in dire need of refurbishment to bring them up to modern standards, and some of them were even full of asbestos, which needed to be dealt with. So rather than spending the money refurbishing them, BR decided to build new DMUs. They had a choice between an expensive, more sophisticated DMU and a simpler DMU, which was much cheaper to build and maintain. They chose the latter. There are some interesting design features though. For instance, the bodies were completely removable and interchangeable, being one single piece, almost like we see here in model form. So the mechanism was confined to the underframe only, which must have been a maintenance dream come true, I assume. They were powered by a Leyland 200 horsepower engine with automatic transmission, and 96 sets were built in total between 1985 and 1987. And a number of refurbishments have taken place over the years. They even remained in service until 2020, when the final examples were withdrawn. Many of them have now been scrapped, but several have also made it into preservation, including the original Class 142 unit, which is now part of the National Collection. So there it is, up close and personal for you, the Dapol Class 142 Pacer in N-Gage. And I'm really impressed with this actually. In many ways the models are quite simple, and we'll go into that in just a second, but they're also pretty intricate. I mean, don't forget this is N scale, and they're also very well painted, as you can probably see, and they also seem to be very, very competently designed. I really like the design of this. But one of the most impressive things about this set is the weight. So the whole thing comes in at 97 grams, which is quite a lot really. Again, this is N-Gage, this is way smaller than 00, and yet the power car itself is really heavy. This comes in at 71 grams. The other one is less than half the weight of that, but the one where the motor is 71 grams, that's going to make it a really decent hauler. That's actually more than double what the pannier tank from my last N-Gage review weighed. So it's very, very heavy. To say that the interior is mostly empty as well, yeah, very, very heavy. Okay, so simplicity then. Well, yeah, they are relatively simple models. So the underframe detail is mainly just moulded. I don't think any of this is separately fitted as far as I can tell. We don't have any interior detail, which is a shame, so there are no seats inside. In fact, we've got DCC sockets and such, which are fairly visible. We do have a tiny bit of detail inside the cabs where a driver's seat is visible, but apart from that there are no controls or anything, and the floor of the cab is relatively high. On top of that, most of the detail on the rest of the model is just a part of the moulding, so things like the wipers on the front windows and the door assemblies and the handrails around them, these are all just part of the moulding. Now all of this is perfectly sensible for N-Scale. I think to try and make this more intricate would have just been silly. And while some N-Gage DMUs do apparently have full interior details, I think the fact that this one doesn't is not that much of a big deal, again because of how tiny it is. I do think this simplicity makes the full price quite expensive though, almost £160. That's more than £75 per unit. One of them isn't motorised, and they don't even come with the full interior lighting. You've got to buy that as an extra. I think the discounted retailer price is a bit more reasonable, and that special discount that I saw on Rails, that's a lot more like it. At more like 50 quid per unit, yeah, this is much, much better. But anyway, let's take a closer look at some of the features this model does have. So like I say, the decoration is fantastic. We've got a lot of these tiny prints on the side of the body, including the Merseyrail logo there. We've got some what look like grills. Are they supposed to be printed grills? Not sure. We've got running numbers, little tiny warning signs, maybe buttons or something on the side of the doors there. We've even got the no smoking signage on the windows, and those are really tiny prints. We've also got the window frames picked out around the front of the engine, as well as the destination boards. That one's Manchester, Piccadilly, and I think the one on the other end said Chester. And we have got lights on the ends of the model. Whether these are actually going to work, I'm not sure, but I'll certainly have a look at that when we get this running. And then obviously the roof is painted into the grey, which looks very convincing, and it's very sharply painted as well. And as you can see, there's a ton of moulded detail up on the roofs here. In fact, moulded detail is something this model does very, very well. It relies mostly on moulded detail, and the riveting and such is incredibly sharp. It's very well done. We also have the exhausts, which are separately fitted parts on the back of each unit, and those are very convincing. I'm really glad those are separate parts because they stand out excellently. And then you've got the representation of the corridor connector between the two units, and there are more printed details back here as well. We've got warning signs, information about the model, the stats and such, all very faithfully printed. So on the plus side, you've got a great likeness to a Pacer at a very small scale, yet they also seem to be well engineered and heavy, certainly where the power car is concerned. On the downside, they are a little bit expensive and slightly basic, and also if you want to have the full experience, i.e. interior lighting, you are going to have to buy those extra light bars. But otherwise, this looks absolutely great. So what we'll do next is get these down onto my track. We'll give them a test, see how they run, and also take a look at the mechanism. Really itching to see how this thing works and how they've managed to cram everything that they needed to inside these little units. So let's get onto that and let's see how we get on. So there it is, down onto the track, the Dapol Pacer, looking fantastic. I'm really impressed with this thing. And I've already filmed the initial performance test, so I'll show you how that went in just a second. After that, I went on and looked at the mechanism, and that's what we'll go through now. So yeah, on the whole, the mechanism is quite impressive, I would say. It is relatively bare bones in a number of ways, but that is kind of to be expected in N-Scale, and in many ways, simpler is better in N-Scale. But let's jump in. Every single wheel on the model picks up, and as I said earlier on, it picks up through the axles, so technically it does have the separately fitted metal bearings, which basically means that you've got no drag from pickups on this model. On the powered car, we've got both axles geared, and as you can see, the gears here are exposed, which makes lubricating them quite simple, I suppose, but it also exposes them to dust and dirt, which could be a little bit of a pain for servicing. So you've really got to make sure the track's clean with a model like this, otherwise it's going to pick up dust and hair. Body removal is relatively straightforward as well. There are no screws holding the bodies on, so you just very carefully pull the chassis away from the body, much like as they could do in real life, and that gives you access to the chassis, which has a very heavy die-cast block on it. This is where a lot of the weight comes in, and it really is a heavy chassis as well. You've got a tiny motor here, which does seem to be a good quality one, although if I push the focus back, you can see that there is a worm drive directly connected to this motor. So that means we've got no drive shafts, the motor is directly geared to those axles, and there are no flywheels on this motor either. We've also got a next 18-pin DCC socket on board, so that's the chip you need if you want to DCC fit this. And then we've got some wires going into the body, and these power the head and tail lights, which this model does have. Very impressive. And then you've got a socket at the back of the loco, which is for the light bar, but as you can see, there is nothing plugged into this at the moment, so that is an optional extra that you have to buy. And then the gauging is quite reliable at 7.3mm back to back, which was exactly the same as the Bachmann pannier tank, so no problems there. So yeah, as you can see, quite a simple mechanism, but it really does do the job. And so on that note, let me show you how that performance test went. Moment of truth then, time to give this a test. Now, as the instructions suggested, I have given this a little bit of oil on the oiling points, and I've also made sure that the wheels are clean. So with that, let me set the direction, and let's see if there's any life in this. How does it run? Let's find out. Oh, it's off. I have to say that was a pretty smooth start. Now, I don't know whether this has been running or not. I should have asked Jack that really, but I think just for the sake of argument, I am going to run this in today, just so that then I know for sure that it has been, and I can show you what it's like after being run in. But this is, I guess, how it runs right out of the box. Pretty good. Let's have a look what the gearing's like. I'll run it by at 50% speed for you, so let's do that. Yeah, I mean, the gearing is super sensible. That's really, really good. And what about the crawl then? Let's see what this can do. My other N-Gage loco wasn't a great crawler, so let's see if this one can do any better. Easing up. Oh yeah. Started to, and then it stopped. Come on, don't let me down. Yeah, it's stalled now. There we go. Let's try again. I mean, it is on points there, to be fair, so maybe I'll have to try this somewhere else, but yeah, it does seem to be stalling, doesn't it, when I try and go super slow. Let's go around to the back and try it away from the points. Okay, let's have another attempt then. Just gently ease it up, see what this thing's capable of. Oh yeah, that's better. But it stalled again. Right, so I'm thinking it's probably going to need a bit of a run-in, so let's do that. There we go, and it is running beautifully, so yeah, it seems to be really promising. The speed is great, it's nice and smooth. Reliability seems to be a little bit rough at the slow speeds, but that could just be because it's not been run in, or it's been sat in its box for a long while. So I'll let this have a good warm-up, and then we'll come back and we'll do a little bit more testing, see what it's like then. But so far, yeah, it seems like a really decent runner. Alright folks, I am back, and that is running in complete. And a few things to talk about. First of all, while it doesn't have interior lighting, it does have tail and headlights, which is amazing at this kind of scale. So in reverse, you've got the red lights, as you can see, and then you've got a cool white light coming on in the forwards direction. So not sure how accurate the cool white colour temperature is for the headlight there, but at least it's got lighting there, which is good to see. I also tested this thing across the points, and as you can see, no problems at all. So the reliable gauging and good weight of the models has really served them well there. Now, during that initial test, this wasn't that reliable, and I'm hoping that that was just because it needed a warm-up. So, is it any better at crawling now? Let's find out. Let's shove it into reverse. Well, I guess forwards, technically. And let's see. Now, that is amazing. Look at that, and it does now seem to be sustaining that. Now, when I reviewed that Bachmann pannier tank from last time, I was quite kind to it when it couldn't crawl very well, because I assumed that that would just be par for the course in N-scale. But this thing is demonstrating that that is very much not the case. I mean, the power and the control at the slow speed that this has got is fantastic. Look at that. And you can accelerate very smoothly as well. It's really, really good. I'm actually amazed by how good this thing is. Very, very impressive. And the torque is great as well. I don't really have a way to measure this properly, but if I do the sort of torque test, put my finger there, you can hear there's torque to spare. It's turning its wheels, pushing against me, so it's going to be a reasonably powerful runner. So with that, I'll move this out of the way and I'll show you what else I'm going to run today. And it's this, the famous pannier tank that I've been talking about today by Bachmann, or Graham Farish, which is obviously not relevant in any way to the Pacer, but it's also the only other modern N-gauge loco and train that I've got. So let's get all this started, let's see how we get on. Let's go for about half speed. And there goes the Pacer. So honestly, I think this Pacer is awesome. It might not be dead flashy, it's not packed to the hilt with loads of different features and specialities and that kind of thing, but it's got everything it needs to do the job properly. So it's got a competent mechanism, nothing too over the top, but it's enough to make this run genuinely flawlessly. It looks like a Pacer, it's not that complex in its level of detail, but it's good enough so that it sells the illusion perfectly, and it does have one or two nice features, such as the lighting on the ends. That is quite an amazing feature at this scale. So it's not cheap, no, certainly not cheap, but it does the job, and in fact it does the job pretty darn well. So I'm really impressed with this. It's actually more impressive to my mind than the Bachmann pannier tank I looked at last time, and that's not really what I expected. Maybe it was unfair of me to assume Bachmann would have done a better job than Dapol, but yeah, at least based on these two models that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm really curious to try some more models in N-scale by Dapol, because they seem to be the bee's knees according to this. So great stuff, really, really enjoyed this one. Let's have some ratings then for the Dapol Pacer. Now this model first came out in 2019, I believe, so it is relatively modern, and yeah, for the most part it is built to modern standards. Level of detail I've given 3.5 star. On the plus side, the paintwork is fantastic, even right down to the little no smoking symbols on the windows. It's also really cool that it's got head and tail lights, and also the moulded detail is absolutely fantastic. On the downside though, it doesn't have any light bar fitted, so the interiors don't light up. It has no interior detail either, which is a pity, and I have seen models in N-scale with interiors, so there is that. And it also does rely quite heavily on moulded detail, which makes the underframe particularly look a little bit on the basic side. All of this is absolutely fine for N-scale, and I don't think it detracts much from the model, but just in case there are super detailed models that I haven't seen yet in N-scale, I'm going to knock it down a little bit for those issues. The performance though I cannot fault, especially now that it's running. This is perfect. It is a little bit on the noisy side, but I don't really mind that. I mean, the real things were pretty noisy as well. It is, however, perfectly smooth and reliable. Pickups on every wheel, which means that this can get over points without any problems. It handles points without derailing either, and it can crawl marvellously too, so 5 star there for sure. I don't have any means of accurately measuring the pulling power in N-scale, but what I can say is that this is very powerful. It's heavy, much more so than the Bachmann pannier tank I looked at, and even though this is mainly going to run as a 2-car set, you will find that this could haul a lot more than that, I reckon. So very good pulling power. The mechanism I've given 3.5 star. There's a lot of good to see here. It's got all-wheel pickup, which is great. Seems to have a quality motor and also a nice modern DCC socket, and the two units are connected electrically so that they can share pickups. Having said that, only one of the vehicles is driven, the other one is just a dummy. That's fine, but that is what it is. And you've also got the exposed gears on the underside, which could be a bit of a maintenance issue, and there's also no flywheel on the motor. These are minor issues, but I have knocked it down a little bit for them, so 3.5 on mechanism. Quality though for me is 5-star. The weight is wonderful on these, particularly on that driving car, so there's a lot of metal involved, which is good. The paintwork is spot on, I didn't see any issues in the decoration, the finish is quality as well, and even though the models are simple from a separately fitted detail point of view, that is separately fitted has been done really neat and tidily, so can't fault the quality. I think it has to be a 5-star. Value for money then, I've given 3-star. Yeah, £156.40 as an RRP, or around £133 at the retailers, does seem to be quite a lot for what you get here. Like I say, it's a relatively basic model, it's not that feature packed, does seem a little bit pricey, particularly when you consider that only one of the vehicles is motorised. On the other hand though, this is N-scale, it's fiddly, it's got the lighting, it's got the detail. Yeah, it's not terrible value, you do get what you pay for to an extent. So I've given it a middle of the road score of 3-star. I think if you can find this at a good discount, the value is even better than that, but it's certainly not bad. Overall then, that is 7.93 out of 10, or a grade of C. And into the logbook we go, where it is first place. Yep, first N-scale review of 2024. I am planning quite a few more N-scale reviews, many of them from Dapol actually, so I'm looking forward to seeing how those turn out. So there you have it then folks, that should just about do it for my review on the Dapol N-Gage Pacer. Love this thing, really do love it, and thank you so much to Jack for lending this to me so that I can give it a try. And you know, this is such a pleasing model, despite how horrid the Pacers were in real life. But it looks so good and it runs so well that it's just a pleasure to have and run. So I think I might have to keep an eye out for one of these to see if I can pick one up. And you know, if they're £100 or so discounted, that's really quite compelling. But anyway, please let me know down in the comments what you think about this. Is it any good? Do you have one? Which livery have you got, if so? Is this one of Dapol's better models, or are some of their others even better? Please do let me know. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.